The American Indian athlete has played a prominent role in the sports history of Oklahoma. Probably best known as Jim Thorpe, a Sac and Fox Potawatomi who some consider to be the greatest athlete of all times.
Those Indians have always been the great athletes. I mean, you go back to Jim Thorpe, obviously. He was all of our heroes. He was the number one. I guess he was Sac and Fox and Potawatomi, and and to think what a great athlete, and to have him earn the credit as maybe the greatest athlete ever. I mean, that's a heck of a role model. So, I mean, we should put him way up there on our list and have everybody sort of take that kind of dream.
Other American Indian athletes from Oklahoma are Moses Yellowhorse, a Pawnee, who pitched for the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 1920s. Robert Johnson, a Cherokee, a major league catcher with the Phillies in the late 30s and 40s. Pepper Martin played for the St. Louis Cardinals from 1931 to 1944. Allie Reynolds of Muskogee Creek played 3 sports at Oklahoma A&M and then pitched for the Cleveland Indians and New York Yankees from 1946 to 1954. He was named Professional Athlete of the Year in 1951 for pitching 2 no-hitters in the same season. Johnny Bench, a Choctaw, played for the Cincinnati Reds from 1966 to 1983 and was named National League MVP 2 times and played in 13 consecutive All-Star games. He was elected to baseball's Hall of Fame in 1989. Other Indian athletes include All-American football player John Levi, a Cheyenne who played for Haskell Institute in the 1920s. Jim Thorpe said that Levi was the best athlete he had ever seen. Also playing for Haskell Institute in the late 1920s was Caddo Rabbit Weller, who went on to play professional football. Jess Rennick played football and basketball at Oklahoma A&M and went on to captain the gold medal U.S. Olympic basketball team in 1948. Jack Jacobs of Muskogee Creek, quarterback of the University of Oklahoma football team from 1939 to 1941, went on to a 22-year professional football career. More recent athletes include Sam Clappin, Don Chandler, Sonny Sixkiller, and Kywin Supernall, all who distinguished themselves nationally in sports. University of Oklahoma basketball coach Kelvin Sampson, a member of the Lumbee tribe, was recently named by Sports Illustrated as the most influential American Indian in sports today. The unique story in Oklahoma sports centers around 6 American Indian basketball players who played for then Division I Oklahoma City University and their celebrated basketball coach Abe Lemons. Lemons had a gift for finding talent in small Oklahoma communities, and he liked to recruit American Indians. He even referred to himself as the greatest American Indian basketball coach.
We came from small towns. He came from Walters, I came from Hollis, and so getting kids from Sorrel and Fletcher and Elgin and so forth, he was proud to have those kids. They had a special quality about them, and he was very proud to have a strong Native American influence on his team.
I've been around Indian boys all my life, and Indian girls, and it just seems natural. Mm-hmm. But I always liked small town boys. And I'd recruit an Indian any place I could find one to play. Hard-nosed, they'll toe the line for you. You can count on them in a clutch.
If you come from an area where making a living is difficult, you learn to work. And he said, I think on the court, the players from these small towns, they seem to work harder when I ask them to, and I like that.
I mean, he got guys from Oklahoma and small communities that ended up being some of the finest players that played at OCU.
And I remember the Indian players seemed to be team players rather than hot dogs. I mean, they worked well together, they listened. It was a good experience for the coaches and for the Indian players.
In 1960, Coach Lemons had 3 Indian players. Bud Samant of Kiowa was an exceptional point guard who eventually came back to OCU as athletic director.
I came here because I changed my mind, frankly, about where I wanted to go to school, and a lot of it had to do with Fred Yago, who was here. A lot of it had to do with being a little closer to home. all of those kind of things, and you know, in a nutshell, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Well, when Bud graduated, I kind of thought I had a chance to get him, but he went on to Kansas State, and one morning I get a call. One night I get a call. He said, "I'm Bud Schmott. I want to come to Oklahoma City." I said, "Well, you should have told that before you went. You talked to the coach over there." He said, "No." I said, "Well, talk to him." Next morning at 6 o'clock, phone rang. It's Bud. So I go down and pick him up. He said he talked to him. He brought him to school, put him in a room. Next day he come in just mad as heck. I said, "What's the matter? Why can't I have a room with Yago?" I said, "Well, you can. Go down and tell that guy to move out, move in there with him. That's all I have to do." He said, "No." So he moves in with him. And I found out why he did it, because they'd have these Indian tournaments. He'd be in there, about 15 Indian boys in there sleeping, hanging out of the rafters. They figured 2 Indians together, they wouldn't have hurt anybody. They just laid in ricks and under the bed, on the chairs. But he kind of get after the team, had to get a smoking one time. And Bud said, "We got to win tonight." And the guy said, "We'll win." So you put that cigar out, we might beat them. But he was kind of kept the team together. He was a leader and a smart kid. He was still stoic in a lot of ways, never said much. But they all liked him. The best game he played, we played Clemson one time. Had a guy named Choppy Patterson, supposed to be great. Bud would just watch him. Just right, never bothered him. The floor had a dead spots in him. If he hit a dead spot, he'd have it and gone. He must have stole that ball off of him 15 times. Max Williams from SMU, he turned him into about 12 turnovers. But he was a great defensive person, just shadow you. There were little people, but he just, everywhere he went just right on top of you, couldn't let you breathe. Really a good player.
I've had some great point guards at Kansas. JoJo White was a great point guard, played with the Celtics. Darnell Valentine and played in the NBA. Tommy Cavisto. I've had a lot of really. You don't have great teams unless you have a great point guard, because it all starts. Offense, defense starts with your point guard. And I really think that Bud stacked up with any of those point guards. He could have played for me at Kansas, and even in our great teams at Kansas. He was exceptional. He put tremendous pressure on defense. It was hard to get the ball up the court against him, and then he pushed the ball well on offense, and was a terrific ball handler, and he could score.
Remember that time that the Oklahoma City tournament? That used to be a big tournament, and used to bring in some good talent, good teams, stuff like this. And I remember this one star player that Bud had played against, and I guess did real well, because in a paper it quoted that he was still looking over his shoulder in hotel lobbies and restaurants, stuff like this. Where's that little Indian?
Bud Samant, just a tough player, defensive, just tenacious, just didn't let you go, and was on you, and plus did all the other aspects of the game. But I just remember his tenaciousness on defense. It wasn't just a timid; it was attack, and it didn't stop. And
the late Fred Yago, also a Kiowa, was described by Lemons as a fireman.
Yago was stoic. He never said a word hardly to anybody. He just had a smile. He sat down on that bench about half awake. He was a substitute, what I call a fireman. He and Red Hansen, when things wasn't going well with the starting 5, they'd go in and put the fire out. They'd come in and give us a boost. That's something in basketball you have to have, is a boost. Yago was funny in a way. He didn't say much, but everything was kind of funny. Had a hard time in school, but he made his way, and was a very outstanding player, a good shooter, kind of did a jump shot. I just kind of see him now, just jump shooting it in. But he was a good kid, and Bud kind of kept him lined out. His school was hard for him. It was a sad day when I heard that he died.
He was extremely athletic, and you know, here in junior college, here's a 6'4", 6'5" guy, as active as he was, and had a nice shot. As a matter of fact, when I first saw him shoot the ball, he had side spin on the ball, and I thought, I'm going to have to help him with the shot, except I kept noticing it was going in all the time, and so I left him alone, and he became very good to score. But one of the most unique things about him was that he couldn't hit a free throw. He had an exceptional field goal percentage, but he couldn't hit a free throw. And so he came to me one day and said, "Coach, if you'd let me shoot a jump shot at the free throw line, then I think I can make those." So I thought, what I have to lose? And so I said, "Well, prove to me you can." So he takes a jump shot. He hits 24 out of 25. And so obviously I let him go ahead and shoot free throws.
They still talk about Fred Yako today and his hook shot, and it didn't seem to matter where or what hand he could do the hook shot with either left or right.
When I was watching Yako for the first time, he didn't start the game, but I was a statistics hound. I kept up with all the averages, and he was, I think, first or second scorer on the team. But he came into the game, and it looked as if Samant was looking for him. And Yako would run behind a screen or get open at the top of the key just for a second, and the ball would be delivered just perfectly to him by Samant. And Yako would just jump up and shoot it in the hole and run the other end. He didn't miss much.
But he was a gentle giant, you know. He was just a good guy. He had some friends, you know, that really liked him here, you know. And that's about all I can say. And he liked to play ball. He played a lot of Indian ball and just enjoyed it, you know. That was his thing.
Kiowa Apache Eugene Sudel was known as a great shooter who could score from almost anywhere on the court.
I was in the 7th or 8th grade. We had a high school All-American named Eugene Sudel, nicknamed Porky, and he was my hero. And so I went to OCU and watched him play several times. He was a fabulous shooter, one of the best I ever saw. And in high school, played on a team that was in small school basketball, was ranked first or second. It didn't win the title, but he was a one-man gang. He was deadly, real fast, and he had the outside shot that enabled him to average probably 20, 25 points a game. And if he had played in the era of the three-point shot for the outside scoring, he probably would have averaged 30. Very natural. His shot was, to another shooter watching the technique, it was so beautiful because he had the perfect release and the backspin on the ball was always perfect. And Lemons admired the way he shot, and he told me that he asked Gene how he learned to shoot like he did, and he said, "Coach, I shoot the ball 1,000 times a day."
He was on that team with Larry Jones, Coper Hill, a bunch of great shooters. And I think most of them would say he was either the best or one of the best shooters that has ever come through OCU.
But he's a good shooter. Wipe his hands off and drill it. There wasn't anybody better shooter than Eugene. If he had a better chance to play, he'd have done better. I'll say that. If I had to do over again, I'd probably pay him more.
This game footage of a 1960 game against the University of Texas may record the only time in Division I history that there were 3 American Indians on the court at one time. In 1964, Gary Gray, a Delaware, came to OCU and was the 6th leading scorer in the nation. He later went on to play professionally for the Cincinnati Royals.
Gary Gray was, to me, I was a freshman, he was a senior. He barely got across the center court and he was firing. I mean, I think we were talking about the fact that he hit 55 points in a game for OCU and without the three-point line. And that would have probably equated to a heck of a lot of points. But he signed to play professional basketball and actually was in Cincinnati when I came up in '67 and played with the Cincinnati Royals. I actually have a picture. I wish I had it out because it was Gary and I think Connie Durking, and we were out down at Crosley Field. And I mean, it was really special. I think that the Reds organization realized that 2 kids of Indian heritage was actually in Cincinnati playing for their professional teams.
Really good players, amazing shooter. His range was out of sight out there. It was so far out sometimes, and very athletic. And I just think of him as one of the really great ball players. And
Gray is a tremendous player, a great shooter. But he's wanted to play when he wasn't capable of playing, when he was a sophomore. He asked me, he said, "You don't like me, do you?" I said, "Yeah, I like you. You know, I'm the best player you got, you don't play me." I was just waiting for him to tell me. He said, "All right, I'll just play you, see how you do." Put him in the game, he went 3 for 13. We win the game. Next game he goes about 2 for 9 and we win. But I won't talk to him. I don't talk to him in practice, don't look at him in a huddle, don't say anything to him at all, and he's just around trying to get in. We played 3 games this way, and he's getting where he wish he hadn't have said it, I'm sure. So he comes up and he said, I called him in. I said, "Great, I'll let you play, and you don't play very good. What's the matter, don't you like me? You're not going to have any more trouble out of me." In the meantime, he called his dad, talked to his dad, so Coach Lemons driving me crazy, I'm going to quit. His dad said, "I think you ought to quit." Never had a quitter in the family. I think every family ought to have a quitters. And he said, "I'm serious." He said, "I'm too." He said, "Don't let anybody run you off. You get ready to go on your own. Don't let somebody run you off." So Gray came back and did well the rest of the time. But his dad saved me. I told that at his funeral, his dad's funeral, what he said to Gray. And made the difference in him moving and doing something that he would have been sorry for. But he played for Cincinnati, played well. But that's back when they didn't use shooters in the pros, or he would have made it. They just didn't let him shoot. Had certain guys that shot.
Abe saw us shooting baskets with Porky one afternoon, and he kept up with me after that. He watched some of my high school games, and he actually wrote me letters once or twice a year from the time I was 8th or 9th grade. And the letters would have the tone, "When you get out of high school, and you come here when you're a chief." So early on, he was kind enough to give me some encouragement and make me believe that I had a chance to get a scholarship, which I needed to go to university.
Kiowa Comanche Mike Tosi originally came to OCU to play baseball, but ended up playing basketball as a point guard.
I was supposed to play baseball for Coach Hansen, and he came to Bacone to talk to some players, and he needed a shortstop. And Coach Hauser, and he says, "I want you to go there." He says, "Try out for the basketball team." And he said, "I think you can make the team." And so I said, "All right." And so Coach Hansen comes in, and we visit, and I sign as a baseball shortstop. So I come in, and it's like Coach Lemons said, I'm scared to come here. I come here, catch a bus, and get as far as Tulsa from Lawrence, and then my aunt brings me in. And I get on campus, and she drops me off, and then she leaves, and here I am, 2 suitcases, and nowhere, here I'm on campus. So I walk around and come to Frederickson, sit down, and Coach Lemons walks by, and he looks at me, and he mentioned, and he talked to me a little bit, and then he referred me to Coach Hansen, and then from there I enrolled, and I came out and walked on, and then eventually played a little bit, and by the second semester I got to play quite a bit.
Mike's very aggressive. You couldn't ease up. He didn't know how to relax and play. Everything was just chew the numbers off his shirt. And a very good shooter, and very serious about everything. He had to have a day off once in a while. I'd give him a day off. Had the Indian rule, where the Indian got a day off and nobody else did, because he wasn't an Indian.
Mike Tosi was a guy that I always took special pride in, because we went to Apache one night and recruited him and his partner and to come to Bacone, and Mike came in. We had a number of all-staters and guys that that had been highly successful in high school, and Mike came in and not only played with them but beat many of them out, and was the hardest working kid I ever had. I was so proud when he went on to OCU and played, because he was the kind that came from a small school without much notoriety, made a place for himself, successful, and not only as a player, then went on with success in life.
George Beatty, a Caddo, was recruited by Lemons in 1973, the year Lemons left OCU for Pan American University.
Division I, and I like that aspect, that I got the chance to play Division I as opposed to having to go to junior college or something like that. And ride around on a bus. And when he recruited me, he told me he was going to, you know, I was going to travel. And so, you know, that was another, you know, reason why I went there, you know, because schedule was, you know, we went to a lot of different places.
And George, while I was here, working here at OCU, coaching, and I think that was a little bit before I became athletic director, and I always enjoyed him, and he loved to play, and good shooter, and could do a number of things, and
the jump shot he had was he'd get off the floor, and his range was probably as similar to what I've seen in Gary Gray.
George Beatty was like Soodle. He came in when we had other players. He had a hard time getting around him and didn't get to play much. He was smart, knew he was going to get out of school. Never played as much as he should, but he was a good player.
Lemons, the guy asked me when I finished coaching, I got 599 wins. He says, how's it feel not to get 600? And I said, how many did Adolph Rupp have? And he said, who? And I said, you've answered your own question. But he did not know. I don't care. When it's over, like Peggy Lee says, is that all there is?
During Lemons' early coaching career at OCU, he was able to lead his team to the NCAA tournament or the NIT tournament 8 times. This was an astonishing record for one of the smallest Division I schools in the country and was only surpassed by UCLA and Kentucky during the same time period. This despite the fact that in 1973, when he was in his 18th year at OCU, his salary was a meager $14,000.
He was a very successful coach. He took Oklahoma City University to so many NCAA tournaments and postseason tournaments. I mean, his record as a coach is something to really be proud of. I know he continued to do that at Texas. He had very good teams at Texas. Texas and Arkansas used to really battle for the Southwest Conference Championship.
As a fan of college basketball, I thought Abe was one of the most talented coaches I ever saw. And when I say that, he could read a team that an opposition and make adjustments on how they needed to play them so they could be competitive, even when the other team maybe had more talented players. So he found a way to keep them in the game and give them an opportunity to win the ball game. I think he got the most out of his talent. And I always felt like that Abe's players responded well to Abe, and that's why they were so competitive in whatever conference they were playing in, because they responded to him, and that he was able to bring them to that level.
You know, Billy Tubbs and the coaches from his era and now, they didn't write the book. They read Abe's book is what they did, because we got up and down the floor. I can never remember, Abe and Paul Hansen, I think Mike can tell you that they worked as a duo. I can never remember being tired in a game. I can never remember feeling that the guy I was guarding was in better shape than me. And that came from running so much and being in shape and just the run and gun. It was a good, if you like to score, that was a good way to play.
He toughened me, and he made me feel like I had to work hard every day. And if you did work hard for him, he allowed you to have an opportunity to play. He enjoyed seeing people work hard. He enjoyed seeing people give a good effort all the time.
About Lemons was that, you know, he didn't complicate the game. I mean, we didn't have a lot of plays, and you know how, you know, usually it was uncomplicated. And I think that's a coach has to kind of realize that. And you got too much going on, you're not going to play well. You've got to worry about too much stuff. And I think that's the key.
The kind of teams that Coach Lemons had were fun to watch. I think it was fun playing in that period of time. And so I think he'll always be remembered that. He should be remembered as one of the greatest coaches we've had in this country.
And I think the basketball practice that I had helped him be looking at studies as easy compared to getting down on the line, running till you can't run until you get up and run some more. Fireman carry, I really worked him hard. And I think school was easy. I enjoyed it and I missed it.
Holy mackerel, for crying out loud. Shorty, see? You been drinking again? Hey. Shorty, see? You been nipping again?
Coach Lemons probably never realized the tremendous source of pride that his OCU basketball program was to American Indians, not only in Oklahoma but across the country. Whenever the team traveled, local Indian communities would come out to support the OCU Chiefs.
One of my life's dreams was OCU basketball was big time when I was coming up. And one of my dreams was to go and play at OCU, and that didn't happen. And those people that you mentioned, you know, Bud Samant and all those guys, you know, along the way I've had a chance to meet a lot of them, and oh, I tell you what, you know, the influence that they had back then. I mean, that was something that every Indian kid could look at. You had an Indian role model there.
They made me proud. They made me very proud to be an Indian. When I would read about them in the newspaper and hear other people talk about them. It seems like when I was around the other students or even the older Indians from Colony and the farmers, they'd always talk about OCU, about the quality of the basketball players they've had, and also the coach, you know, how he brought the team together and how they developed the team. And
when you have someone like Coach Lemons, he was one of those individuals that believed that you can do it. And there are so many negative coaches out there, and they yell and scream. He had a different psychology about him. And if he didn't believe that you can do it, then how can you do it? And I would imagine, you know, that it left a big impression upon the students, because Bud Samant has become PhD. People gone into business. The Indian graduates have been extremely successful. So, I mean, you know, it's too bad we don't have Abe Lemons in every school in the country, or every school that teaches Indian children.
I remember the families used to come up, you know, to a lot of the games. I remember the Indians used to have a section there in Frederickson. They would come up mostly from western Oklahoma, Fort Cobb, Anadarko area, and Lawton. A number of them had gotten in the habit of coming to OCU games when Fred Yago and people like that played, and they just kept on coming. And then when Bud Samant became the athletic director, they could always get tickets through Bud. And they always had this. And, you know, Lemons encouraged, honored, and acknowledged that. Didn't really matter what your background was. He just kind of encouraged you to stay in touch with it while you were still growing.
It was impressive for me to watch people like Bud Samant, Fred Yago, Gary Gray play, and then Indian athletes before that. Because if you look at the history of Indian people, there was a period of time when it was very difficult for Indian people to get respect. It was difficult for Indian people to make a living and to work on equal terms with other people. So I think OCU basketball gave a lot of Indian people throughout the state of Oklahoma, throughout the country, an opportunity, I think, to feel as if they could compete and be on the same level as anyone else.
And a lot of the community people would go out of their way to go watch these ball games, and was very proud to say, you know, hey, you know, that's a family member down there. I mean, it was like extraordinary because they were at a university or at a school, you know, going to college and making it in all the aspects of the college life.
Everybody from around here would go to Oklahoma City to watch OCU, the Oklahoma City Chiefs play, you know. And Abe I think he was trying to get that involved, get the Indian people around to notice that there are athletes out here that can compete on a.
You guys look at films. Y'all look at films after the game or any time.
From 1955 until 1973, Paul Hansen served as Coach Lemons' assistant. Their personalities and styles were a perfect complement to one another.
Paul Hansen was a wonderful man, and Coach Lemons gave him a compliment that I always thought was special. someone asked him what he thought of Paul Hansen after Paul had gone and become a head coach at Oklahoma State and elsewhere. And he said he's a man without fault. And I think that's a good description. He was always cheerful. He would run you if you played bad. he would make sure you got plenty of exercise the next day after you lost. But I think that Coach Lemons would have said that from a technical standpoint, teaching guys the plays and the basic fundamentals, that Hansen was without peer.
Coach Hansen is probably as good a person that I have ever come in contact with. Here's a guy that thought that it was wrong for college coaches to take shoe money from shoe companies because he thought that drove the price up and it was tougher for youngsters to buy shoes. Not too many people out there would turn down money just because of a principle like that. After I played for him, I called him after I got into coaching and said, Coach, I thought you were a good coach, but I had no idea until now why you did the things that you did.
But Paul Hansen was an outstanding assistant coach for Abe for many years, and then later became the head coach at Oklahoma State University. And Paul, like Abe, both of them were very good basketball coaches, but maybe more important than that, they were quality men, really wonderful human beings.
If there was ever a gentleman in the game of basketball, it was Paul Hansen. Great man, great coach, but more than anything else, just a great person.
I think they were, first of all, friends. They were very good friends, and they appreciated each other, the abilities that were there, the things that Paul brought into Abe's program, and vice versa, what Abe would help Paul in the process of becoming that head coach that he wanted to be. And I think it was a really good relationship, and they just appreciated and treated each other fairly and just very well. And besides that, they had a lot of fun in the process.
Paul was the epitome of a gentleman. He was the epitome of a gentleman. Abe was a gentleman, but you'd have to kind of cut through some of the things that he said and the way he did things, except Paul just always was just a nice guy. And he was a good disciplinarian out on the court, but he was a nice guy. I thought they really worked together, because I used to watch their teams play, etc. I thought they were a great combination, to be very honest about it.
If I could be half the person that Paul Hansen was, I think I'm a success. I was very, very fortunate that the good Lord put me in contact with Paul Hansen. I'll never forget finishing up my career, didn't have any NBA scouts or professional scouting beat down my door, still needed 2 years to graduate. Coach Hansen left Oklahoma State and went to University of Science and Arts in Chickasha, Oklahoma. He called me and said, hey, Wynn, I want you to come with me because you know why? I want you to get your degree. He really, really, truly cared about his players, and again, I mean, he's like a second father to me.
Coach Lemons was probably best known nationally because of his quick wit and humor, which caused some to describe him as the Will Rogers of college basketball.
You want to vote you for that, Harper? Guy plays the worst has to stay. All right.
He would see things through a different set of eyes and find a way to make it amusing. And he always spoke at my golf tournament, and people would tell me that they would ask about the tournament coming up, and it'd be 2 or 3 months. And the first thing they'd ask me is Abe coming back? Because they were afraid that he wouldn't, and he would be our after-dinner speaker.
He seemed to see the world differently than most of us do. And I guess there are a number of quips or one-liners, jokes that he told over the years that stick with most people. And one line he had was, the safest part of an airplane is at the very back. So the reason for that, he said, you ever see one of those things back into a mountain?
Guy played, 48, how long was a basketball game? 48 minutes? 48 minutes of the game, he scored 1 point, and they made the statement, he says, well, you scored 1 point more than a dead man.
It was traditional that Abe would get the team together and make the boys express themselves. So he asked every boy to stand up and say, why did you choose OCU? And most of them said, because it's small, individualized instruction. People would care for you. And it's a good brand of basketball and all this. When he got to me, I was kind of feeling mischievous that day, you know. So Abe asked me, he said, so Idle, why'd you come to OCU? And I said, I came to OCU and Oklahoma City to learn, I paused, ways of the white man, I said. So Coach Hansen just kind of turned pale and looked at Abe like, this is yours now, I ain't going to touch that. So, you know, you can't top Abe. So Abe would put his things, he said, to Siddle, there's some ways of the white man you shouldn't learn, he said.
I was walking off the court at halftime of a game where we were barely ahead of a team we should have been drubbing. And we had played not so great, but we'd gotten what I thought were a lot of bad calls, and he especially thought were bad calls. So when the officials were walking off the court past him, he closed his eyes and started like this, as if he were blind, and started whistling the Three Blind Mice to them. They didn't appreciate it.
They played in the NIT and got beat badly. I'm sitting in the press room with Al McGuire, and some guy came in and he said, you can't believe what the hell's going on. Oklahoma City's out there scrimmaging. So, you know, I mean, they just rushed out en masse. And when we got out there, he had his kids in skins and shirts scrimmaging.
I called Abe and I said, Abe, hey, your old Indian buddies here in the hotel, what's the chances of sitting on the bench with you tonight? He said, you bet, come on down. So I go down and sit on the bench with him. Well, about the first 5 minutes of the game, I think we were behind 30-2 or something like that. While we're sitting there, and I realized, man, we're really getting beat. And the Boo Birds New Yorkers were really putting it on us. And so I got up to go to the bathroom, and Abe asked me in his usual way, oh, where are you going, Wade? And I said, well, I'm going to the bathroom. He said, no, you're not. I said, we'd all like to go to the bathroom. He said, you're going to step right here on this bench and live through this with what we're living through. So I stayed there, never went to the bathroom. I stayed there with him. But after the game was over, and I'd forgotten what they could be. It was bad, I know that. But we went to the dressing room, and after the dressing room, the reporters didn't go to the winners' room. They went to Abe's dressing room, and
when the game was over, his comment was, well, I wanted half my players to have a chance to get ahead in the game in Madison Square Garden.
And Howard Cosell, who was extremely well known, thought that was just awful. And so he got him, called him for an interview, called him Bush League. We'd never had anything like this in Madison Square Garden before. If you need to practice, you practice at home and that sort of thing. And Lemons told him, says, listen, Howard, he says, you might be big stuff here in New York, you know, but down in Walters, Oklahoma, you ain't worth picking up.
I'd just been elected to the Hall of Fame. My son was born in December, and I'm really proud, you know, I get up and make my statement and say, you know, I'm so proud of what it is and proud of where I grew up and my heritage and everything else that I made my son Robert Binger Bench, Bobby Binger Bench, and you know, after Bob Hope and Bobby Knight. And that's, of course, you know, I'm sitting there all proud of Oklahoma, and I'm, you know, saying Binger's going to live on forever and everything else, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, he got up and said, boy, it's a good thing you didn't come from Bowlegs.
One of my first trips with him, we went to the Oklahoma Indian Missionary Conference up north of Okmulgee. And it was a missionary conference, lots of Indian church leaders. I mean, hundreds of them. And that, you know, it's the other great thing about Abe. If you told people he was speaking, there'd be a crowd. Well, here we are in front of this large group, I mean, hundreds of church leaders. Abe gets up there, and the first story he tells, I'm not sure if you heard it, and I'll try to condense it. He said, I've been to Alaska. I went to Alaska. They made me an honorary Alaskan. I went to Hawaii, and they made me an honorary Hawaiian. He said, but then I went to the Virgin Islands. And they didn't know what to make of me. And here I am, I'm sitting there saying, oh my God, this is a church group. And that was his opening line. And I mean, they loved it. And
Bobby Knight talked to Abe, spent many nights in his home, and always made decisions after he had consulted with Abe. And one of the, not necessarily funny stories, but true stories, when Abe was at Texas, Bobby was seriously considering going to the University of New Mexico. And he was laying on Abe's couch and kind of contemplating what to do. And Abe said, Bobby, there's only one problem with you going to Mexico. And he said, what's that, Abe? He said, you're going to take Bobby Knight with you.
And then the next year, Coach Hansen came down to recruit me. I'd made All-State in basketball. And I had still had the desire and dream to be a Major League Baseball player, so they didn't really have baseball at OCU. And I was so flattered that they thought enough of me. And I came back to Oklahoma for an award to be honored as, I think it was 1970 that I was actually awarded the Sportsman of the Year in Oklahoma. And several coaches, football coaches and everything else, but Abe was there. And Abe came up and said, you just didn't get it, did you, son? I said, what are you talking about, Coach? He said, if you'd have come with me, he said, you'd have had a 4-year scholarship. You could have graduated. You would by now be a high school coach at Gotebo. You don't know how much you missed it.
We played out in a tournament. And Bud, we were running a delay game, and Bud just throwing the ball away and just going crazy. Threw it up against the backboard, and it came out. He's going over there, came down, and they're closing up on us. And it looks like they're going to win and play now. Iowa State. And the ball comes off, goes over the back, and Bud's got the ball and won't give it to the referee. And the referee said, give me the ball. Give me the ball. I said, what's the call? What's the call? And the reason I know this, the referee comes by and tells me this. And Bud won't give him the ball. And so give me the ball, I'll give you a technical. And Bud said, oh, and the referee grabbed his arm and said, what kind of talk's that? He said, that's Indian. So the guy come by and said, is that really Indian? I said, I don't know. I said, not in the tribe that I know. I know what it is in Comanche. But he said, the referee told Bud, said, I'm going to check that up. If it's not Indian, I'm going to give you some trouble next time I see you. That's good. But I keep telling, it's a funny thing about a word, it's not dirty if you don't understand the meaning. Yeah. Like I said, quitop to Bud one day. He said, don't talk like that.
They should let you surrender. You should be in a business like a war. Even a war you can surrender.
It's been said that Coach Lemons' superb skills as a coach were perhaps overshadowed by his humor, but Division I coaches respected and appreciated his knowledge of the game.
But the thing that I appreciated most about Abe was that he was a coach's coach. When practice was over, I loved to get his perspective. He had an unusual way of putting everything in an elementary form. He wasn't a very complicated person, yet he was brilliant. He wasn't a person that was overly technical, but yet he had a genius about him that I really appreciated.
I think the Bobby Knights and those people in the coaching arena, I think they all know what a good coach Abe Lemons was. I think they think he's funny and they enjoyed being around him, but I think if you go down, if you could, the top 20, 25 coaches in America that knew Abe, and you talk to him, I think every one of them would say, hey, yeah, is he funny? Yeah. Is he clever? Is he a little bit different? Yeah. But he's a heck of a basketball coach.
You really know what a man is when other coaches are very close to Bobby Knight, and he talked in reverence of Abe Lemons. They talked about every chance they had, they would sit down with Coach.
Abe always was able to conceal the fact that he was a damn good coach. I think he had a great grasp of basketball. I remember talking to him one time. He said, give him the corner shot. Make him take the corner shot. Well, somebody might just pass that remark off. But the most difficult shot in basketball is to shoot from the corner. that sums up all of defensive play. Because if you can force the ball into the corner, then you've put it in a position where the offense can't do a hell of a lot with it. And the things that he said were often very simple, but had a tremendous amount of meaning. And I think that one time he was asked how many of his players graduated, and he said every one that wanted to. And I thought that was a great comment.
I think sometimes he was never given enough credit for being an outstanding basketball coach. Because of this humor, he was always joking around, and people oftentimes took him for not being serious about coaching, but he certainly was.
Yeah, he had great respect from the coaching fraternity. And when he came back to OCU, they were in NAIA classification. And at the Final Four, you have all these coaching clinics, the Dean Smiths and the John Woodens and the Bobby Knights. They all conduct clinics and that type of thing. And so Abe was speaking at 8 o'clock in the morning, his clinic time. And the question came up, Coach, what's the difference between coaching at a Division I school and an NAIA school? And as you know, you would expect from Abe, a quick quip was, you're looking at it. If I was a Division I coach, I'd be speaking at 3 o'clock this afternoon. What they didn't tell you was that there were over 200 coaches there at 8 o'clock in the morning to listen to Abe speak. That guy that spoke at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he had about 20 or 30 coaches in listening to him. That's the kind of respect that Abe had in the coaching fraternity.
Well, I think that he probably was ahead of his time a little bit in that they played a much faster pace when he was at Oklahoma City than most colleges did. By the time he got to Texas, I think there were a lot of other people that had copied his style. They were running the ball up and down the floor a lot faster than maybe they had in years past. But I always felt his teams were so well prepared that you just knew that you were going to have a battle on your hands.
He wasn't afraid to innovate. He wasn't afraid to change, and consequently, he did a lot of changing. He I don't think innovated pressing defenses and that type of thing, but he cherished the dummies who would think that because they scored a bunch of points that they didn't play good defense. And he loved that mentality. And the first thing that hit you was, these guys played great defense. These guys played great defense. Well, that's how they score all their points, is off of the defense. You'll find that's true in a lot of games.
He was a great up-tempo coach, and they played the full-court game. People call it nowadays the transition game and so forth. I'm not sure what we called it back then, but both on offense and defense, he kept pressure on defense and moved the ball quickly down the court in transition. But he was more than just that. I recall an instance that in the all-college tournament, the heavily favored team was Xavier, and Xavier had gone to had won the NIT the year before and had all their players back, and they were nationally ranked. And they came in, and so Abe took advantage of his quickness and ball handling and spread Xavier out. Xavier's big and strong and so forth. And so he would back cut them, spread them out, back cut them, and so forth, and beat an exceptional team. I think he beat them by 15 or so points, and it was a huge victory for OCU.
If you pull out the numbers and just go one-on-one, which they do in basketball a lot of times, you hear about one-on-one so much, who are we going to put him with? Dean, Adolph, Hank, I mean, Mike Krzyzewski. I mean, who are you going to put him with?
Played in the all-college tournament. Bud just destroyed him. Press Merritt sent me a note down. Said, have mercy. I sent one back, said, white man must pay for his sins.
A man's life is not necessarily measured by his success in his career or by the wealth he accumulates, but the true measure is seen in the lives of those people that he touched.
When you hear ex-players talk so highly of a coach, I think that speaks volumes of his character and his integrity.
Like I say, the letters that we received from those boys that praised him for everything that he did for them, that was real rewarding. And he loved his Indian players. He really did.
I owe a lot to him and to that university. And I think that those of us who played for him learned so much and had so many experiences. And one thing he liked to do with all us kids from small towns was travel. You know, we went to Seattle and Miami and Honolulu and New York and all these places, and he enjoyed taking us to those places. So I don't think there's a way really that we could adequately ever pay him back for his belief in us, but I don't think in his mind that we owe him anything. If we gave him what we had while we were at school and on the court, I think he felt that's a fair deal.
And he was always positive with us. He was always giving us reason to think that, you know, the goal could be reached and we could do better. And you know, as it turned out, that's true. And later in life, you know, all of those things that he said and all of the advice he gave us, I think helped. I know it helped me, you know, get through the career that I've had. And those kind of things, I think that lots of times you don't think about when you're a player.
But I do owe Coach Lemons a great deal in regard to my being, I think, successful in many ways. I don't think I said 2 words to him in 2 years, well, except that one time we had that conversation.
I'll be back.
Yeah, I'll be back. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, I'll be back. But he was very important to me, and even became very important to me later. It's when you're young like that, you're 20, 21, you don't know anything, and then later it's like Bud said, you realize what he's trying to do and how much he's trying to push you and how much he cares about you. And I realized how much he cared about me, and I realized what he was doing, and he made me a better person.
You know, Abe gave me one of the highest honors that he could possibly give me when he asked me to present him at the induction to the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. And I remember one of the things that I said was that we probably never will know how much he actually taught us in what he did.
I think that's the real legacy of Abe Lemons, is look at his players and look at how many of them are in leadership positions, how well they have done, whether they've chosen business or education or some other profession. Those players are just, they're just real credits to that OCU program. And it's not just the players who were stars.
The number one thing he was a teacher, and I think he took more pride in being a teacher than a coach. And you look at the people who played for him and what they did in later life, and you realize he was a great teacher.
I was very upset when he left Oklahoma City University and went to Pan American. I was not upset at Abe. I was upset at the state of Oklahoma. The greatest ambassador we had at that time, and possibly, not possibly, but definitely one of the greatest ambassadors of all time, was Abe. We could not afford to lose Abe out of the state of Oklahoma. You go to California and where are you from? I'm from Oklahoma. Do you know that guy named Abe Lemons? You go to New York, you know. Do you know that guy named Abe Lemons? Well, you know, everybody knew about Abe Lemons, and I just thought it was a tragedy that, you know, we let him get away for those short years at Pan American and University of Texas, and I was glad to see him come back.
I lost a good friend, as so many people did, when Abe passed away, but we had some great games and great battles when he was at Texas and I was at Arkansas, and the media built that up to be such a rivalry, and even though we competed hard on the court, we remained good friends through the years.
Well, you know, I've always thought that, you know, the really great coaches, people make the mistake of measuring their success by the number of games they win, and I always felt like, and Abe's a perfect example of it, that the success is how many of the guys come back in later years and to see him or to honor him or to talk to him or get advice from him. And I mean, they're 40 or 50 years old and they still come back because of the great respect they had for Abe and
Abe was a coach's coach, someone I had great respect for, and I can tell you this, our game really misses him.
I'd like to see him remembered for, first of all, I think that he and Betty Jo, his wife, had a absolutely wonderful relationship. But Betty Jo was always there for him. Abe had all the flexibility. I don't think Abe would have ever been what he is without Betty Jo, and I think Betty Jo was kind of is a little bit of the unknown hero in that situation.
There are a lot of people who've become rich and famous and over the years, but there are very few that really earn the respect and love of everybody who knows them, who's associated with them. Those are the truly great people, and there are very few of those. Abe Lemons was one of the great ones.
everything he did was just pure class as far as I was concerned, and an awful lot of fun.
Well, I think the greatest compliment that any of us can get from an association with anyone, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a father, mother, sister, brother, basketball coach, is that the real connection that comes from it is that you're friends. I think that's what happened with my experience with Coach Lemons, is that in the end we were friends.
And finally, away to the final score, Texas 62, Arkansas 60. We'll be back with a wrap-up in just 1 minute.